Okay, well, okay. I've been a trucking lawyer for 32 years, which is my entire career. I grew up in the trucking business, and you'll forgive me, but I will state that I used to be a dispatcher, and I went to work for another trucking company and supervised dispatchers while I went to law school. And I started my law practice, and right off the bat I was representing drivers, but I also represented trucking companies for the first 10 years of my career. I did not do employment law then. When it came to representing drivers, it was generally collection work for owner-operators, tickets, things of that nature. And I had a life-changing event. Well, first of all, President Clinton helped change my life when he got rid of the Interstate Commerce Commission in 1996, which wiped out about 90% of my law practice. And I was attempting to figure out what I was going to do, and I thought, who needs a lawyer with knowledge in the trucking business? The carriers got lots of big buck lawyers, and shippers got their big organizations and their lawyers. I thought, well, maybe drivers need somebody. So I kind of stumbled and tried to figure out what I was going to do exactly. And I received a telephone call, and it changed my life. It was a lady named Daphne Iser called me. And she related to me a story about how her son Jeff and 4 friends were on the side of a road changing a tire, or they had some sort of car trouble on a turnpike in Maine. And a Walmart driver who hadn't slept for 2 days had falsified his logs, ran them over, and killed, I believe, 4 of the 5 of them. And she started a group called Parents Against Tired Truckers, which it was often perceived as an anti-trucker group. But what they did is got me involved in representing drivers. They gave me my first referrals of drivers who get fired because they refuse to drive in violation of a commercial vehicle safety regulation. So a lot of what we do is we do general employment law for drivers, but about 80% of our work consists of representing drivers who get retaliated against because they won't break a commercial vehicle safety regulation, or they make safety-related complaints. That law is called the Surface Transportation Assistance Act. We do that throughout the country. The other thing we do, a good chunk of our work involves representing drivers prosecuting truth in leasing claims, which govern, there's laws that govern the content and compliance with mandatory terms that must be in a lease between an owner-operator and a trucking company. It does not protect you from your own ignorance in doing a stupid lease purchase. Okay, so if you want to go upstairs and sign a lease purchase and it's a bad business deal for you, we can't help you from your bad business deal. So that's the second principal area that we do. Third is we deal with DAC reports. If there's a Fair Credit Reporting Act, which requires the DAC reports that the reporting agency hire right and do its best to ensure maximum accuracy. And there's rights. It's governed by the Fair Credit Reporting Act, even though it's a consumer report. So that's the third principal area. And the fourth, we do a lot of general employment law for drivers. If they call it, say, I failed a drug test or refused, what can I do? The answer is usually we can do nothing, but sometimes we can. So that's what we do, and I would say about 98% of our clients are truck drivers. We also have done some other general employment law. We were counsel in a class proceeding. EEOC turned it into a class called Deanna Roberts versus Prime, where Prime was found to have discriminated against in its hiring practices against women in employment, in hiring them, and the EEOC found merit. We stayed in as counsel for our clients and shared a lot of their work with the EEOC, and we obtained a very successful award for our client under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act for discriminated against because she was in the performance. That's what we do. I went a little long, so I'm sorry. I tried to be shorter.
Pleasure to be here. I just flown in from New York last night, and I'm excited to be here. I'm here as a representative of Ackerman and Tillijet, a law firm in Los Angeles that's really at the cutting edge of wage and hour class actions for truck drivers, particularly the abuses that go on where for unpaid rest breaks and misclassification of drivers as independent contractors, and owners and operators. Also, the piece rate system of pay, which is a method in which trucking companies can deprive drivers of a whole series of payments that they should get paid. And it's essentially works that when you're not driving, you're not getting paid for work, even though there's an awful lot of on-duty, non-driving work. As you all know, whether it's waiting time, detention time, paperwork, inspection time, and lots of other things. So that's a way in which really a company can get 14 hours of labor and pay for 10 hours only when the wheels are turning. And there's also a whole other two other areas of concentration in terms of the wage and hour, which we'll get back to a little later, which are the fraud cases for the schools that try to provide training and make promises of what the drivers can make, and misrepresent or omit to inform drivers that while they are promised to make easily $45,000 or $50,000 a year, that's a gross figure. That does not talk about, that is before expenses, and the expenses of maintaining the truck and insurance and gas and all that can often lead a worker to netting out $17,000 a year, or sometimes even working below minimum wage, because in order to make that kind of money, the money that's necessary to live, the driver is working 80 hours a week and just eking out a bare minimum wage, if that. And then there's just the fraudulent, deceptive practices of what the schools represent in terms of charging fees, which are deducted from paychecks, and then providing very little. It can be nothing more than on-the-job training, and then they're locking the drivers into these commitments with a rule or a contractual agreement which says if you leave early, you still owe us this money. And so even though it's an abusive environment, the drivers cannot leave, or they feel they can't leave, and if they do, then they saddle with debt. And Ackerman and Tilligeff are at the cutting edge of this, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. And Greg Ackerman and I worked together many years ago on a really exciting case that was the largest sexual harassment case ever brought in the United States without government involvement. And I just should take a second to tell you, do I have a second?
Yes.
All right.
You have more than a second.
May 1st is Labor Day in the Latin world. And in 1998, a major Fortune 100 company, a household name like Prudential or IBM, I won't say the name of the company, I'm not allowed to, but it issued a memo, and the memo was about workplace cleanliness, keeping the floors clean and garbage, etc. Two-side memo. Most of the workforce was Spanish-speaking, immigrant laborers, all documented in a warehouse out in the middle of a suburb. And one side was in English, the other side was in Spanish. And the English side had said, to the employees. The Spanish side had said, todos los animales, to the animals. And the Spanish workers got this memo, which was signed by the president of the facility, and they said, finally, we have proof. After 15 years of being treated like animals, now we have proof. And the company, they stormed the executive offices with the memo. The company got frightened and tried to get back all the memos, closed the doors of the company, shut down the copying machine, shut down the fax machines. One guy snuck out, called his wife on a cell phone and said, mi amor, necesitamos abogado. Honey, we need a lawyer. He opens a Yellow Pages, finds a lawyer. Next day, the lawyer meets them 75 workers in front of the neighboring Kentucky Fried Chicken, signs them all up, and starts to bring this big case against this major company for racial harassment. Unbeknownst to them, that lawyer had no money, no office, no help, and was being investigated for stealing from clients, and was about to be suspended. And so they all, these poor workers gave this lawyer $500 each, which was a lot of money to each of them, and the lawyer took the case and all tried to settle it, and where he would get $1 million and the workers would get $10,000 each. And all of these workers didn't speak English, they didn't know their rights, except one family who had been there for 20 years, had children who were 19 and 20 working there, who were going to college, and they spoke English. And they, in their developing English, wrote to the judge and said, please don't call and close the case. The lawyer is not being transparent, and we want a second chance. And somehow, I know how, but they found me. It turned out the case was not about that memo. The case was about widespread sexual harassment against women in this facility. And supervisors would walk around openly and saying, "Aquí no quiero ni gorda, ni fea, ni vieja, ni prieta." Here, I don't want any old ones, any fat ones, any black ones, or any ugly ones. Solamente bizcochito, just little biscuits. And this was open. Besides which, there was touching, there was pressing pelvis, supervisors pressing their pelvis against the buttocks of women, and there was the demand for sexual favors in return for more overtime and the promise of full-time employment for temp employees. This became a very large case with 150 employees. It was not a class action significantly, which I'll talk about more in a moment. And after 3 years of litigation, it resulted in a very, very big win for the workers with life-changing money for these workers.